once you started watching stand-up comedy, was it something that you began to practice? How did you practice stand-up comedy?
I met. This will sound like well, anyway, there's no other way that I can tell this story, so I'm just going to say the sentence. Anyway, I was talking to John Cleese, and I was talking to Cleese about stand-up comedy, and he said one of the most amazing things, which was, if you want to learn how to do stand-up comedy, one of the greatest things to do, rather than going learn about the rule of three or learn about setups and punchlines or any of those sort of things that are sort of structural parts of how comedy is made, he said, go and find somebody who makes the sort of comedy that you would like to make. Learn their routine by heart. So it might be Jim Jeffries' gun routine, or it might be Eddie Izzard's, Darth Vader, the canteen on the Death Star, routine, or it might be, Bill Hicks's, UFOs routine. Whatever it is that you love, go away, learn that routine by heart, and then write it down. Because once you know the routine and you know where the laughs are and you know it as a routine, if you then write it down, you'll be able to see the structure of how the comedian put it all together. So don't start with the structure. Start with the full thing, learn it by heart, and then write it down, and you'll see how they actually wrote it. And I think that's a really brilliant piece of advice and a really good way to look at writing. And in a way, I think that's how I learned to do comedy. I wasn't doing that on purpose at the time, but we would memorize these routines from these comedians. And I had a bunch of friends. We would just do. Jim Owen went on the big gig, the first time Jim Owen ever did a big TV performance, and he had this routine about seagulls not having any eyebrows. And as 14, 15-year-old kids, we would just do his voice and recite the routine. And the more that I knew these routines, I knew this Billy Connolly routine about stingrays, box jellyfish, like that. I knew it was 8 minutes of comedy, and I would have been able to do it off by heart. And so I think in learning those things, I started to learn a little bit about how comedy was made and what it was. And then at school, we used to have this house play competition. The school houses, like an athletics thing.
Yeah, sure.
Play competition. And traditionally, because I think it had to be, each house had 30 minutes or whatever, and so I think it had to be, the plays were always really boring, because it's hard to find a good 30-minute play to do for a bunch of teenagers. So there'd always be these way too worthy five-handers that were just some sort of just like, this is terrible. And so I was like, I'm 15 or 16, nobody's interested in drama part of the house. So I've just decided, again, I look back on this kid and just go, who the fuck were you, man? Confidence now, but basically in year 10 I've said, I'm in charge of the plays. Fuck you year 11 and 12, I'm in charge of the house plays now. And what I decided I would do is I would audition everybody who wanted to be in the play, because that was the other thing that pissed me off. There might be 20 or 30 people who wanted to be in the play, but because there'd only be 5 parts, no one would ever get a part in the play. So I was like, you know what? If you want to be in the play, I'll audition everybody, and then I'm going to write a 30-minute play where everybody gets to be in it. But obviously the better actors will get more. But if you want to be in it, even if it's just like one line or whatever, I'll write one line in, and thought I'll just specifically tailor make it. So that was my idea. But then I was like, well, how do I write a play? So mostly what it wasn't really a play. It was a bunch of other people's sketches and routines and stuff like that, from television and Monty Python and Elton and all these sort of things that were around, that it had just been essentially rewritten into a narrative. So again, you're just taking, back then it was like literally just taking their joke and changing it to be about something else.
Yeah,
so
right.
that it was so you are just learning by nature how these things are written, how this sketch was written, how this joke was structured. And then, of course, I would try to turn them into a narrative. So I did 2 years in a row. The first one was called Gunfight at the Ozone Corral. It was an environmentally themed Western.
Classic.
And good for bit parts. If someone only can have one line, a Western's a good one for bit parts.
Oh,
and
definitely.
Then the next year, the sequel, Murder on the Ozone Express, which was again, an environmentally themed, but a murder mystery on a train. And again, a good place for just random characters to come in and out. And so our house won those house drama competitions 2 years in a row. And so I think that was probably the prime time where and they were just, they were, a lot of it wasn't original work. It was very much like, as you would say, a DJ mixing other people's work into something original is original work, but it was made of a lot of other people's work in the process. There would have been a lot of samples to clear if I was going to put.
Yeah, so that's brilliant. And so it was just for you, I suppose, through that, because I'm starting to be a primary teacher, and we talk about ways of learning a lot, and it was something that you loved, but it was just incidental throughout the way. And yeah, it's a big old compilation is not a bad way to do it. And at least fuck, I love these jokes. So they're pretty sound. It's pretty sound comedy regardless. It's not, there isn't as much vulnerability in just trying to say a joke and wondering if it'll come off, like, oh, I fucking love these gags. If no one else likes it, I'm still going to love these gags. So there's not much to lose there. And to show the responsibility and authority is such a great way to learn. I think obviously it paid off pretty well.
Yeah, well, the irony is that I think sometimes when I'm at my worst as an artist, in my comedy career, it's when I'm thinking too much about what the audience wants and not thinking enough about what it is that I like and what I enjoy. Gary Goulman, who's one of the best comedians in the world, always says, write the show you'd like to see yourself. And sometimes you fall into the trap of writing the show that you think the audience expects to see rather than writing the show that is truly the show that you want to write. And I always think that I'm at my best when I'm in the latter category more than the former, but it's not always the case.
Very well put, mate.